Good afternoon, this is Jeff at Sewer Tech Northwest. We are at 6300 Southwest Aaron Moore Place here in Portland. We're located on the left side of the house, same side of the house as the gas meter. About 3/4 of the way back down the side of the house here, you've got a 3-inch ABS cleanout. We're going to check the overall condition and serviceability of the sanitary sewer line. Water's currently running. We're going to zero out here at the base of the cleanout. Off we go. And sorry, I'm using my auto leveling camera head is down right now, so I've got the good old-fashioned non-auto leveling camera. Alright, so we're coming up on some standing water here. Water, It looks like you've got a pretty, fairly substantial belly. The amount of water I'm putting down line right now is actually fairly minimal. I've got a garden hose running, but it's... So what you're seeing there as far as the level of standing water is pretty darn accurate. You're not going to see a lot of change when we drain the line out at the end. That's kind of what I'm getting at. I apologize. With my other system, my wireless setup, I can't flip the image over. Alright, transitioning here over to, looks like 6-inch concrete pipe. Now into 3034 PVC. Back to concrete. Probably a root intrusion there at one point is my guess. That's often why you get those tiny little spot repairs like that. And that's the main lateral connection there at about 84 feet. So we're going to let the line drain out here for a few minutes. Then we'll pull the camera back. I'm going to go ahead and locate where the line terminates here while things drain out. Then we'll have another look at everything. Alright, located the camera head successfully there. Line terminates out on Southwest Aaron Moore. I did put a marking out in the road. There's a green T marking you'll see out there. That's mostly just for reference. That's not a repair marking. That's just kind of, you know, a rough idea where the line hits the main lateral. And where that locate came in out in the street lines up very nicely with the clean out. The line does not run dead straight, but it runs pretty darn straight all the way out. Meanders a little bit. Well, someone did a good job spot repairing. It's a very common spot where people mess up and you end up with a settled piece of pipe. That was a pretty nicely done spot repair there. And it's actually a little bit longer section than I originally thought. It might have been a belly at some point, but kind of depends on who was looking at it. Belly's that distance from the house, if that even was a belly. That's rarely a location where I'm recommending a repair. Those distances, bellies are pretty much insignificant and only cause problems when you abuse the line to death. So it looks like all the concrete pipe there is doing its job. Not that it's ancient old concrete either. This is a relatively new house. It's held up pretty good there. And a big hard dive here as you drop down to the concrete pipe. And you know, I mean, the plus side of having that, the downside of a drop like that is, I mean, anytime you do a nosedive of that fashion, your likelihood of getting a belly is much higher. Honestly, it's, and sometimes there's not a lot you can do about it, but that's, you know, in a lot of cases, that's a sign of kind of a lazy install. Ideally, what you do is a nice gradation all the way out. You want to avoid as many of those nosedives as possible because you're pissing away a lot of your slope and grade. That nosedive right there is probably 5-6 feet straight down almost. So, you know, had you taken advantage and used that rather than nosedive it, you would be less likely to have a belly. But sometimes there's a reason for it. Sometimes I got to dive these lines down to get around utilities and things like that, and it doesn't have anything to do with the installer at all. Sometimes you just don't have an option. But it makes your tolerances much tighter. In this first, 40 feet here, you've got to run things a lot tighter rather than putting a nice, harder angle on it that's much less likely to belly. So your the belly here dissipates off at about 37 feet. You can see the water starting to flow off there. This is where the belly actually ends. I like to shoot over them just a little bit here to make sure that I get the whole thing. All right, so right here, as you're facing the front of the house from the street, that's how I describe everything. Right now we're sitting almost directly straight out to the left, off the front left corner of the house right now. And I'm picking this locate up close to the edge of the little concrete kind of walkway that leads up to the side entrance into the garage. You'll see a green X right there between the concrete and the fence line. Very shallow here, only about I'm getting between 1'7" and 1'8". Most consistent depth though was 1'8". I jotted that down on the ground there. Very, very shallow, extremely. Which is a great thing for digging the line up, not so great for attaining grade though. The plus side is, and unfortunately, sometimes it is necessary, if someone did their math wrong or, did this thing too tight, sometimes you do have to chase that grade out and take that belly out further than you'd ideally want to. The good thing is, though, is that you do have a whole bunch of depth to work with. There are cases where, if you don't have enough fall between here and that point, sometimes you got to chase that grade out a ways and take it all the way out to where the line dives to try and get some grade back. So that end portion of the belly there obviously is quite minor, but because of how significant this belly is and how close these things are together, I'm mapping this out as one continuous belly. You would not fix this in parts and pieces. With as shallow as this thing is, there's hardly an installer out there, or repair guy, that's going to even try and do it by spot repair individually. They're just going to, do this thing in one continuous go. Otherwise, you're unlikely to fix the belly, especially with the depths you're working with here. I got to push this thing back out. This line really gets quite close to the neighboring house adjacent to us. Where we're at right now is under this big metal chair thingy. My locates are coming in kind of weird. Gotta push out here a little bit and get out from underneath that stuff. All right, so here I'll show this with the camera here in a second when I pull it out of the clean out, but about 1'11" is what I'm getting there. The line swings out much further from the house than I originally thought it was going to. I mean, from visually speaking, it almost looks like it crosses the property line potentially into the neighbors to the left of this house, but it's hard to say. I'm not sure where the property line's here. Visually speaking, that's what it looks like, but. And right there, there's a lot of stuff here to the left of where I'm at. It's going to be making it very tricky to do some locates. There's a lot of big piles of rocks and whatnot. Let's see if that belly comes any further back into here or not. That actually, I didn't even realize that was the start of the belly there. Magically chose that spot. Okay, so where I just located right there, which is essentially the very start of the belly, is under this big rolled up piece of carpet. So granted, that's going to throw the depth off a little bit. I got 1'8" there, but that's also locating through a rolled up piece of carpet. It's flattened out to an extent. It's been out here for a long time, but anyway, your belly here essentially runs from about 14 feet. Yeah, we're closer to, yeah, we'll call it 14. 14 feet to about 38 feet. Obviously, you've got that break in between the more significant belly and the more minor belly, but as I was saying before, you're going to probably have to chase that whole thing out there to at least the end of the second belly. Sometimes you got to go further than that. Luckily, it's shallow. I'm hoping they can configure it as it sits currently and don't have to go and overshoot this belly too much. All right. So the arrow just in front of this I did is a little easier to see. The X is almost up underneath a bush. The X is where I'm marking the start of the belly. As an easy landmark, there, it directly in line with it, up against the side of the house over here, you have a grounding rod. It is perfectly in line with that grounding rod. If you walk about 6 feet straight out the left side of the house from that grounding rod, you'll find the X. It's just barely tucked under a bush. If you look at the X from where I'm at right now, you'll see it no problem. But as you come walking up this side from the street, you may not notice it. But anyway, I do recommend a repair there to correct that belly. There's enough buildup in it, and you've got a decent amount of standing water. You've got what looks like about 2 inches of standing water there. So you've got enough water to cause issues. And then right here, we just went back to the foundation wall, and you immediately go vertical, because what's on the other side of this is, I think, the garage wall here is what it looks like. So we immediately just go straight up in the air. That's as far as I'm going to go there. Yeah, as far as this thing swings away from the house, this is a kind of an odd part of town to see party lines. You do have, I think, some duplexes and things in here. I don't know if they do any shared lines in this area, but a lot, sometimes when lines swing that far away from the home, they're doing it to get close to the other house so they can tie into it. That may not be the case here at all. I don't see a clean out on obvious one from the neighbor's house near this area here. So that's just be, pointing out a possibility. So anyway, I'll try and get this so you can kind of get a better idea of it here. All right, there's the clean out, and then we're facing out towards the street. So the line cuts this direction, and it gets around these big pieces of wood here, probably about 6 inches or so to the side of them, and then it runs up, and then right where that fence line starts, where the line starts to cut back toward this property. So again, I don't know where the property lines are here. It just kind of looks like it may cross the property line. And if it does, there may very well be an easement or something in place for it. I'm just wanted to point that out there. So getting a pretty consistent depth there, range of about 1 foot 7 inches to about 1 foot 11 inches at its deepest point. And I've marked that all out with green paint there. I highly recommend rescoping the sewer line after the repair is done. It's a very, very good idea to do that, to ensure that and you want to do that when the trench is closed. Luckily, this is not a super deep line, but you want to get it buried, do your compaction, everything you would normally do. Make sure you put a load on the line before you do a rescope on it. Otherwise, you're not going to catch any. If the line bellies back out again, you won't catch it if you don't put weight on top of it. This line, for instance, probably looked perfect until they buried it. But there's also, you've got some stuff sitting over top of the line here. You've got some big rolls of carpet. You've got, some rocks and whatnot. If the line wasn't bedded very well, it sometimes doesn't take a whole lot of weight to cause settling issues. Everything beyond that section there, before and after it, all looks like it has good slope and grade, good flow, and doing its job.